start. First of all, when you assess, you always need to check national standard, assessment standard. Okay, so National Science Education Standard, assessment standards says assessment must be consistent with the decision they are designed to inform. Yep, consistent is very important. Standard B, achievement and opportunity to learn science must be assessed. So you need to assess achievement of science, opportunity of learn science. Okay, and C, technical quality of data collected is well matched to decision and actions taken on the basis of their interpretation. So the data need to match with the decision. D, assessment practices must be fair. Always need to be fair. E, the inferences made from assessment about students' achievement and opportunity to learn must be sound. Okay, so your assessment always need to be fair and sound and well matched to your decision. Okay, so I recommend you use variety of as many as you can. The teaching assessment method as many as you can. Use them as and then get together because some of your students very excellent in observation. But if you don't have that observation assessment method, then that student's gonna fail in your science class. Even if he or she has good, excellent skills in observation. Okay, so it needs to be fair and sound. That means I want you to use teaching assessment methods as many as you can. That's the way it can be fair. It can be sound. Okay. So when you assess your science students' science performance, you better think about these 4 areas: process skills, inquiry, attitude, and contents. So you can measure these 4 areas to understand your students' performance in science. Okay. First of all, we're gonna talk about process skills. How you gonna measure students' process skills? First of all, you need to develop indicators. Indicators means students' behaviors, students' attitude that show students' understanding, behaviors or mental attitude or everything that show your students' understanding. That's the indicators, especially indicators for process skill you can develop. This is just one example of indicators for process skills. I will send these indicators. I'm sorry, this is inquiry. Okay, so if you want to measure inquiry, here's indicators of inquiry. Okay, teacher need to set some these steps. You need to do some actions to students and then check if your students show some of these indicators. Learners pose question. So when your students ask a question, that means your students improve inquiry. That's the showing inquiry. I'm sorry. Inquiry indicator you're seeing. And learners selected among questions posed new questions. Okay, so among questions, your students start to ask new questions. That means he or she improve inquiry too. Learners shocked or clarified questions provided by teacher materials or other source. Learners engaged in questions provided teacher materials or other source. No scientifically oriented question posed. So these are just the indicators, so you better check. Maybe no scientifically oriented question posed. This one is not improved in inquiry. Okay. Other inquiry indicators I can show. See, here's more indicators. When you bring cursor down, learner determined what constituted as evidence and collected it. Learners directed to collect certain data. Learners given data and asked to analyze. Learners given data told how to analyze. Data neither, this one is not showing any inquiry improvement. Okay, so these are things show how much your students improve inquiry. Okay. So this is indicators, but also you can develop process skill indicators. Process, remember, students ask a question and then do some prediction and experiment and get some data and then make decision and then apply and then have another question. So whole this process we call science. And then when you want to see your students' improvement in this process, then that means they can do science and they also improve in process, right? So you can set your own indicators, like students ask questions related to science topic, your science topic. So that can be your indicator. Students do set experiment and get some data on their own. Yep, then it can be a good process skill that your students show. So it can be another indicators. When you go website, inquiry or process indicators in science classroom, when you use that keyword in Google, you can find out lots of good examples of indicators. Okay, so when you want to measure students' understanding in inquiry and process skills, yep, you better set indicators in advance and then check during your class teaching. Then you can see your students improve in that area. So you can measure process skill and also inquiry together in your class. This is also a scoring system for process skill assessment. You can give some score 1 to 4, nothing, satisfactory, performed, well performed, outstanding, advanced manner. And then you better make some stations, station 1 to 11, and then each station you can observe some process skill like observing, classifying, communicating, measuring, predicting, inferring. And some of the stations can have the same another way to measure, predicting, observing, classifying, measuring, inferring. It's up to you. And then you can give some score. Of course, you just walk around each station, and then you can give some score for each your student. Okay? Because you have 11 stations and full score gonna be 4 for each station. Then total is need to be 44 points. But it'll be less than, sometimes less or sometimes full. So you can measure students' process skill. When you have those process skill to be measured, each station you just put some questions, and then you can measure their process skill improvement, right? Or some station, you can ask the students to draw something, okay? Like, for example, you put some seed, a plant seed, and then ask the students uh, what this plant, how this plant look like in 10 days, and draw it. Or you put some fruit on one of the station and then ask the students draw what's inside. When you cut in half, how it look like, draw it. So illustration you can put as part of measuring students' understanding. Sometimes you can ask the students to develop physical models to measure how much they understand, right? For example, when spaceship launch and go to moon, then how the moon spaceship to stay in on the moon, the spaceship need to be, because in the moon the gravity is so light, right? So even people can jump high enough, right? So spaceship need to be landed and stay on the ground. Maybe it need to heavier, right? So by using their imagination, prediction, inference skills, you can ask the students to develop some model, right? So yeah, physical models you can ask this to students, so you can measure their understanding. Analogies. You can ask the students like, can you develop analogy uh, for human body or human blood circulation? How you can compare human body circulation to something? Then some students can say like a factory belt can be an analog to human body's blood circulation, because human body blood circulation can help deliver some food and oxygen, all kinds of things to each part of our body. So factory belt can deliver the product to each part, right? So some kind of analogy students can develop, and with that analogy, teacher can measure how much your students understand. Okay, so yep, to measure students' understanding, to measure students' process, to students or physical, process, inquiry, content, attitude. If you want to measure all those things, you can ask these things to students. Question, illustration, physical model, analogies. Okay. Also, to measure process skill, you can have a lab report sheet. So, or your own checklist. Develop your checklist, and then when students do some lab, then you can check their process skill. Like they do their own experiments, lab set they did, and they produce some data. Then you can check. They show some process skills, right? Um, or of course, those checklists you can do by your own observation or through students' lab report or worksheet. Okay. Your observation checklist, you can have this kind of question to